Howdy, I'm back. So I made a video about what I would do to make Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis what I believe to be a successful game that can perpetuate the success for at least a couple of years. I honestly feel like the game is very stagnant, very stale, and boring. Not just for me, but a lot of people. I've gotten comments and messages about how they got bored with the grind. There's nothing interesting that ever comes out because all the stuff that keeps coming out is just for the same characters time and time again without having new characters or more story to engage in at a regular rate. Really makes the game feel stale and is causing a lot of players to leave. And I haven't posted that video yet, but I probably will by the time I post this video. But I mentioned a lot of characters that the game could add to keep the game interesting if they get a regular cycle, and a bunch of summons that they can add as well, which I don't believe there to be as many summons, but there are a lot of summons in the Final Fantasy wheelhouse, so they could add a bunch of things that don't currently exist in Final Fantasy VII original, but may exist in the remake or other games that would work within this game. So I made a little graphic. I'm going to switch over and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I um, put on the graphic here. All right, so first things first. Let's just start with what we know from Final Fantasy VII. Yuffie, that's an obvious. She's more than likely going to be the first character to come out, and Leviathan is more than likely going to be the next summon to coming out. To come out, and as we already have in the game, we've got fire, ice, and lightning, single target and AOE. So it's only natural that we get the water. We get the water single AOE. We get the earth single AOE, and we just got Bahamut, which is a magical non-element AOE that is very high potency and charge rate. I think Odin should be the opposite to that Bahamut. Um, I think the order in some of this obviously could be a little different, and some of these are speculative. I think Sid, since we're not really going to be engaging with the Highwind in in this game because there isn't really a nature to fly around and do that type of stuff. I think it would be interesting if they implement the Highwind or the Highwind, whichever you want to call it, as a summon, and I believe this should just be purposed as the wind single AoE. They could explain it as some kind of wind guided missiles or rockets that bombard the enemy with wind damage or something. It doesn't have to make perfect sense for it to make sense, but we need that wind, we need that water, we need that earth, and then we need the obvious opposite to Bahamut. And then once you cover all the elements like that, and the opposition between physical non-element Odin and magical non-element Bahamut, you pretty much have everything covered there. At that point, they can start considering adding some of the characters outside of the normal wheelhouse that we would be expecting to come out. Reno, Rude, Elena, Sang, all of the Turks. I think it would be really interesting to have the Turks as playable characters. They are really interesting, and I think there is a fan base for these characters as well. And my suggested summons to come out with them are Phoenix. I know it doesn't really make a lot of sense because Reno is typically lightning damage, but he does have red hair, so I think it would be kind of interesting if he comes out with Phoenix. And it would be nice to see a repeat of some of the elements. Like I said, we already have fire, ice, lightning, but if you do want to focus on fire in like a dungeon or something, you can only use the Ifrit summon once. So it would be nice if they did have some kind of duplicates with maybe like a twist. So I put here Phoenix could be a fire AoE damaging limit break, or alternatively, it could be a recovery AoE limit break. And then Hades, I think Hades is typically non-element in Final Fantasy VII, but I think it would be, since he is like skeleton, death incarnate kind of a thing, I think it would be kind of cool if he comes out with an ice AoE and then the status AoE. The status AoE statuses are weird in this game. They don't really get used. So I think for the most part, this would be good as a backup ice AoE summon. That's just my opinion or my idea. Obviously, they can figure something out. There's a lot of other summons in the Final Fantasy universe that they can pull from. I have some examples over on the side here, but we'll get to that later. Then Typhon would be a good second wind AoE with a debuff EoE. I think that would be kind of an interesting mix. So he either does the wind AoE wind damage, or maybe like an AoE defense, physical and magical defense down on the all enemies. That would be pretty cool and pretty useful. And then Kajata, which was in Final Fantasy VII in the original, was typically fire, ice, and lightning damage. I think having summons with multiple elements could be really confusing for resists. I did have like a kind of an idea of like that, if maybe he did still maintain the fire, ice, and lightning damage, it would ignore like a single resist. Like if he's weak to two of the elements, if the enemy's weak to two of the elements, but resists a third, it will ignore the resist or something. I don't know. I honestly just think that would get really confusing. So I think Kajata would just be a good secondary lightning AoE Esper, and then maybe he has an all element resist buff AoE as the alternative, the secondary LB there. And then moving on, still staying within just Final Fantasy VII universe itself, these are some more characters that could be considered added in the future, and I think would be interesting, and there would be a fan base for some of these characters as well. But Rufus, obviously, and I paired him with Neo Bahamut. That can just be a single very high potency physical, so kind of like Odin, but instead of Odin being Odin having the AoE, this could be like an extremely high potency single target, as opposed to that cutting down the potency a little bit on all targets. And then Bahamut Zero with Sephiroth, and yes, I do believe that adult Sephiroth should come out as a separate character. And the reason for that is his model is just way bigger. He typically has much bigger, much longer swords. If you remember from the original Final Fantasy VII, that's just like one of the most notable things. He's the very long hair, the long coat, the extremely long katana that like looks like it would be unable to be wielded by a normal person. It's just larger than life. He is a larger than life character, and I don't think that young Sephiroth does him justice. I think he could have much cooler looking LBs, much more interesting LBs. So I definitely think old Sephiroth should be a completely different playable character in the future. But yeah, Bahamut Zero, just an example for him. Master Zagnan, Tifa's teacher, a master traveling martial artist. I think that could be a cool character just to throw in the mix. Just to get, like I said, they have a lot of characters in the Final Fantasy VII universe that are considered like fighters, that could totally be thrown into the mix here. So I don't think that he should be left out. And then Dine, who was Barrett's friend and Marlene's actual father, uh, I believe, if I'm not wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. It's been a while, but yeah, Dine, I think would be another really cool, interesting character, and I coupled him with Cactar, which was not an original Final Fantasy VII summon, but he is in Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I think anything that is available in the remake should be subject to use within this game as well, moving forward in the future. But that in itself, right there, is 12 characters. That right there can fill a year's worth of content updates, and that doesn't even that's just the tip of the iceberg, because you have all these other Final Fantasy VII games that I haven't even touched on, because these are just characters you'd see in Final Fantasy VII original. Now, moving on to Crisis Core, which I'm not as familiar with, so I might be missing some characters here. You might know more than me. I tried to go through a list of like Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus before Crisis to see some of the characters that look like they can be considered someone that would be fun to be playable or a fighter. But again, I might have missed some. Some of them seem to just be like scientist type people, and I wouldn't expect them to be fighters. Like you notice, I didn't put Reeves on here or Scarlet or anything like that. But Scarlet, I actually probably is more than a fighter than Reeves, because Reeves typically is like a peaceful guy and he controls Kate Sith. And that means that he is a fighter, but otherwise he's not really a fighter. But yeah, you wouldn't typically see like maybe like Lucretia fighting, but she is a character in the universe. So I tried to look through the characters that you would probably encounter in battle or battling or considered warriors in the universe here. So I have Cisne, if I'm saying that correctly, which is a Turk that I believe is featured in Crisis Core. I mean, I've seen her in Final Fantasy's Ever Crisis in Zack's event storyline. I'm not too familiar with who she is, but I think that's another, it is cool. Like, I have Elena over here. I think another female Turk type character would be cool and interesting in the future. Angiel, Genesis, obvious two choices. I think they're kind of crowd favorites in a way, and people would love to see them playable. I have Whis and Nero the Sable, which I could be wrong. I think are brothers, but they are both characters that are part of some other group that's kind of like the Turks, I think. But yeah, then we've got some of the other soldier type characters, Roche from the newer Final Fantasy VII. I have Kadaj, Yazoo, Laz from Advent Children. These are possible characters as well. Shalua and Shulk, which I believe are from Dirge of Cerberus. Again, I could be wrong because I haven't played a lot of these games, but they look like two interesting, waifu type characters that would be interesting to play in the future. And then obviously we have Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. They could be interesting to add as playable characters in the future as well. I don't think any of this should be really off the table. And that's another 14 characters right there. So this in itself, this list would be 2 years worth of character content updates. And this isn't even touching what they could potentially add through new and unique First Soldier content. This isn't including any of the characters that I may have missed, because I don't know every single character from the Final Fantasy VII universe. But this is just 2 years worth of characters that I think would be interesting to see. And you know what? After 2 years of playing this game, they start running some repeat banners and repeat return banners and stuff. I don't think that would be as boring and stale as seeing the same characters that we have time and time and time again. So, and again, like all these summons on the side, Carbuncle, Chocomog, Fat Chocobo, Chocobo Chick, Knights of the Round, not necessarily all Final Fantasy VII original summons, but Chocobo Chick, Carbuncle, and Fat Chocobo are in the remake. And in the original, you have Chocomog, which is a chance to spawn the Fat Chocobo. But then some of these other summons could definitely be worked in here and workable. Gerudo, Diablos, Golem, Bahamut Fury, which was a Crisis Core version of Bahamut. They can definitely add a bunch of different variations of Bahamut that look really cool and do interesting effects. And it's not out of the question. Tonberry, Fenrir, Sylph, Siren, Atomos. There's a bunch of summons they could consider adding from a bunch of different games that would be workable. I honestly don't think they need to add all of these summons. They do need to finish out like the core list of summons that we need: the water, the earth, a water single and AoE, the earth single and AoE, the opposite to Bahamut, and then the wind single and AoE. They definitely need to do that. And then I definitely also think they need to consider adding a double of everything in AoE, just so we have that like really useful aspect for different dungeons that may, like I said, focus fire. And you can't use Ifrit twice. You can't use Radiant Plume and Hellfire. You can only use one or the other, and obviously you're going to use Hellfire because it's the same potency but AoE. So having a second access to fire, ice, wind, lightning, earth, water, the main elements, having access to a second Esper or summon that has those, I think will definitely help us out and make the game a little less boring, so we're not just using the same 3 summons constantly. But yeah, so there you have it. That is just my I want to call it a short list of characters that I think they should look into adding in the future, and summons they should add in the future. And like I said, I think we need to start getting a new character every month, maybe, and a new summon every month, because this game is getting boring without having more of a variety and something new. Actually, something new, someone or something new to look forward to every month instead of just another Aerith outfit. You know what I mean? So, yeah. If you watched the video this far, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Like and subscribe if you like the content, if you agree. And yeah, as always, send your feedback to developers. Start pushing them to add some new stuff. Let's make Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis great. I want to say great again, but I don't know if it was ever great or if I was just confused by the honeymoon phase, But peace out. Hit that like button.